Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Welcome to the show and welcome to my February 2022 Spotlight episode where I talk about comic book news, previews, and other things that might be of interest to you. In this case, I'm going to spotlight my top 5 favorite comic books of 2021, along with some of your favorites as well. So first, let's hit the news. So top of my list here is, I'm sure you've heard about this, how the comic book Mouse was banned by the Tennessee County School Board. The McMinn County School Board voted to remove Art Spiegelman's Holocaust memoir from its curriculum over what they're calling adult language and nudity. Later, they stated that the reason was, quote, the board felt this work was simply too adult-oriented for use in our schools. One of the persons involved with the board, Mike Cochran, this is according to the minutes from the January 10th meeting, was quoted as saying, quote, not saying that there is not important material. I've read it and read through all of it and the parts it talks about his father. The father is the guy that went through the Holocaust. I liked it. There were other parts that were completely unnecessary. The naked pictures, acts of attempted suicide, and cussing. You have all this stuff in here. Again, reading this to myself, it was a decent book until the end. I thought the end was stupid, to be honest with you, he continued. A lot of the cussing had to do with the son cussing out the father, so I don't really know how that teaches our kids any kind of ethical stuff. It's just the opposite. Instead of treating his father with some kind of respect, he treated his father like he was the victim. Boy. Nothing like cherry picking and imposing your own worldview on a part of a whole story that is more than just cussing and naked pictures, which, my God, the context of why there are naked pictures in Mouse, and you're just focusing on the fact that there are naked pictures. I don't even know how to respond to that other than, oh my God. Oh, so angry about this. I understand, wanting to, take stock of the kinds of things that your kids digest in the media. I guess I am, less concerned about my kids reading and viewing and hearing things that are maybe a bit beyond their years. I mean, it really just depends on the kid and the situation and the material. And it's a judgment call. I get that. But something as important as a personal memoir about something that your father went through, something horrendous that your father and family went through as the Holocaust, and to reduce it down to just cussing and being disrespectful to your father is asinine. I can't even believe. I mean, I can because I've lived through this before. When I remember in the 80s, there was and I'm sure there have been other examples of this, but over the years, but I just remember in the 80s, there were a lot of talk in the news about book banning. And I mean, this is nothing new that librarians have to deal with all the time. Neil Gaiman's works get on the ban list a lot too. But, just the trivializing Mouse to that degree is just frustratingly furious to me. I can't. I mean, just like Spiegelman said, who he was on CNN. Quote: "I'm still trying to figure out how this could be. I think of it as a harbinger of things to come." Yeah, I think it's already here. Unfortunately. I also have seen a few things on Twitter regarding Mouse and how it's not that great. The art's not that wonderful. Just people just taking pot shots at Mouse, and it's all subjective. I get that, but it's more. The work itself is more than its component parts, and I can't. You just have to absorb all of it, and within the context that it's being presented in, and why it's being presented, and not just focus on little pieces of it that you may or may not like. I don't get it. I don't get this mindset. So there you go. Wow. All right. Moving on, I guess. Didn't realize I was gonna. I write these notes out, and I don't read them word for word, and sometimes I go off and off on a riff or on a tangent, and I didn't expect to go where I just went on that one. So anyway, here we are. Okay, other comic book news. More supply chain issues. For specifically with some DC titles, DC announced that Justice League and Wonder Woman, some of those issues were being delayed because of these paper shortages. From the press release, quote, "The entire publishing industry has been suffering from supply chain issues as the COVID-19 pandemic has longer-term effects on paper mills, transportation companies, and the workers." Related to that, and something that I just saw this morning as I went to record, I saw this on Bleeding Cool. So, take it as you will, but there were photos. So, but apparently the cardstock variants that DC publishes are now going to be, or at least some of them, are matte, have a matte finish instead of a glossy finish. And the quote unquote article, it was more of a complaint than an article, but it cited the same supply issues. So I don't buy the cardstock variants, so I haven't seen that yet. So I'm wondering if are you seeing that? Are you seeing these matte finishes instead of glossy finishes? Based on the photos that I saw, it doesn't look great. It kind of muddies the art. But we had the same concern when DC switched its paper from the more glossy stock. This is, a few years ago. I think they were taking advantage of the whole Walmart books, or the books that were in Walmart, and they used a different paper so they could charge a lower price point, and they started doing that with some of their other books. I don't know if they're still doing that, because I'm not getting a whole lot of single issues anymore from DC or Marvel. Or really anybody. So the trades I'm getting are still, for the most part, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess the DC stuff is the paper stock is a matte finish as well for at least one of the trades that I'm looking at right here as I'm looking at my notes. But other publishers, I believe, are still publishing glossy. I don't know. I'm just talking now. I don't know really. I guess I should have looked at this before I started jabbering about it. But anyway, I'm curious if from you if you are seeing this issue. Some sad news. Brian Augustyn, former DC editor and the writer of Gotham by Gaslight, which to me is, it was the first and to me perhaps the best Elseworlds title. Before there was Elseworlds, I think they published that. I don't think it was under that banner. I think it became that, kind of like Vertigo did, where they started publishing these more adult supernatural / horror titles, and then they started bannering them under Vertigo. And I think the Elseworlds banner also was similarly done, where they started publishing these alternate history stories and then put them under the Elseworlds banner, like I said. But Brian Augustyn unfortunately has died from a stroke. He was 67. I think I saw this first from Mark Waid on Facebook, and there Mark Waid wrote some very lovely things about Brian, as an editor, as a co-writer, and as a friend. And there was a few nice stories that Mark conveyed. So. If you have a chance, you should go check out that post on Facebook. From one DC editor news to another editor, Steve Wacker, former DC and Marvel editor, and at Marvel, he was the vice president, head of content digital media, has left Marvel to join Hickman's 3 Worlds, 3 Moons Substack. And in Wacker's, I think it was on Twitter, his post, he thanked Jeff Loeb and Pete Tomasi for helping convince me to take the job. So I found that very interesting that a VP joins this upstart Substack publishing thing. Now, granted, it's Hickman and some of the other folks that are involved with this, but that's I find it just fascinating and a little weird, and I'm very interested in how this will play out. Maybe it gives Substack a bit more weight, perhaps. I don't know. I guess it depends on how successful it is, of course, right? But yeah, just the idea of someone leaving a stable, vice president's job at Marvel to join this Substack, and more importantly, what did Loeb and Tomasi, what did they know about this that helped convince Wacker to go ahead and do it? So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation or those conversations. Anyway, probably it's probably less of a newsworthy thing than just more of an interesting thing to me. But however, the last thing I have for news here that is interesting to me, and this is something that just came out a few days ago when I saw some tweets from Jamie McKelvey. So I've known about this for a while because I am a Comixology buyer. I have the app on my iPad. I also have an Amazon account, and we all know that Amazon bought Comixology, and as of late last year, they were going to merge them into one thing, whatever that thing was. But then last minute, towards the end of the year, I got the email saying, "Hey, we're going to hold off on this." But apparently they're moving forward with it now, and by the time you hear this, it will already have happened, unless they decided to push it out again because of the outcry, the feedback they're getting online. Who knows how that will impact it? But essentially, Amazon is getting rid of subscriptions in Comixology or your digital comic book subscriptions if you are outside the U.S. There might be some other areas that you will still be able to get subscriptions, but essentially it's U.S. centric. I'm sure there are some details, so you should go check out the Comixology FAQ that talks about this. But this is the thing that I saw from Jamie McKelvey. So he says, so subscriptions to comics will no longer be available to people outside the U.S. now that Comixology has been absorbed into Amazon. Great, good for creators and fans, he says sarcastically. Yeah, from the FAQ. What's going to happen to my pre-order comics? If you pre-ordered a book on Comixology with a release date of no later than February 16th, we will fulfill that order for you. And curiously, it says, even if the old Comixology website is no longer available. Pre-orders for books with release dates starting February 17th will be canceled, and you will have to reorder them. And you'll get an email, it says, but... another person on Twitter responding or reacting to this information went and checked out the browser-based Comixology reader, and apparently that's not very good right now. I don't use the browser-based one, so I don't know. No two-page view, no zoom. Let's see here. Yeah, I apparently Comixology is coming out with for their iOS app, at least. I don't know about the other platforms, but they're going to release version 4.0. It says now, and this was a few days ago, and I just checked this morning, and they haven't issued an update to my iOS app. It's still version 3 something. So they're going to be doing that. I assume that you can still read things on the Kindle app, because when I had to merge, because like I said, at the end of last year, they were saying, okay, we're going to merge this. You need to basically, if you have two different accounts between your Amazon account and Comixology, you need to merge those. And so I did in preparation for that. And as far as I know, I still have all of the books that I ordered from Comixology over the years, as well as stuff they ordered via Kindle on Amazon. And so what I had to do, though, because I was thinking, based on this information I was getting, that the Comixology app was going away. It doesn't appear to be that, at least for now. But I didn't realize that initially. And so I had to go into my Amazon account, find my purchases, my digital purchases, and then indicate that I wanted to send those to my iPad. And so that's going to be a pain in the ass if I have to do that, which I did. I started doing that for the books that I'm reading currently. But there's a ton more that I have in my digital Comixology collection that I would have to download to Kindle. But like I said, they're issuing a new Comixology app. So I don't know. I don't know what that means exactly, how that's going to play out. I imagine they would want to have just one thing. I don't know. It's weird. And as most people that I saw reacting on Twitter, no one likes this idea at all. So they really are on the Comixology Twitter feed. They were, however, really playing up the advantages of the merger, including, let's see, you have access to Kindle Unlimited if you're paying for that Prime reading, an Amazon Prime benefit. Which, if you are a member like I am, I get that. I quite honestly, I don't think it has, at least for the offerings that I've seen so far, it's not that big of a deal. So, not that big of a benefit. It says Comixology Unlimited memberships will continue to work as well. So we shall see, I guess. All right, so let's go into the preview spotlight. I'll start off with DC, and did you like Flashpoint? Do you want to return to the world of Flashpoint? Well, now you can, because we're getting Flashpoint Beyond. So issue number 0 has been solicited in the latest DC Connect. Written by Jeff Johns with art by Eduardo Risso. It says here, the world of Flashpoint returns. Like we wanted it to. After sacrificing everything to help the Flash put the universe back together and save Bruce Wayne's life, Thomas Wayne wakes up in a world he thought was no more. Forced to don the cowl once again, Batman prowls the streets of Gotham searching for answers to how this world still exists. But what he starts to uncover will send him hurtling around the globe. The hunt for the Clockwork Killer starts here. When Flashpoint came out, not the main miniseries, but the related miniseries, I quite enjoyed those, because it was like this. It was like an Elseworlds, where we're seeing a whole different look at our heroes and villains and their relationships, and it was very fascinating, especially since these are all new takes. It wasn't like they were exploring already published takes on these characters, and so it was a whole new DC universe to explore for a few months before they did the New 52. But I don't, while I enjoyed many of those books, like I said, and those characterizations and those takes on those characters, did I need to ever return to Flashpoint? No, especially the Thomas Wayne Batman, which actually that particular miniseries was one of my favorites, I remember, but it had less to do with that character than the situation that character was in. And obviously since then, the Thomas Wayne Batman has risen to prominence in the DC universe, given that he exists or did anyway. It sounds like he's going back, but he exists in our world for some reason. I forget now the details, but Tom King used him quite a bit in his run on Batman, and I know he's in the Justice League Incarnate, or whatever that title is I'm supposed to be reading that I forget to go back to the app to read. Anyway, there you go. If you're interested in Flashpoint again, you got your wish. The other thing I want to spotlight from DC, if you are a fan of DC's superheroes on television, on the CW, they are coming out with it says here, it's called Earth Prime. It's a 3-month, 6-issue event set in that TV universe. And so the first one is focusing on Batwoman. with a great cover image. I really like that angular look that they got Batwoman, drawn in. And then the second issue will be Superman, the Superman and Lois as well. So, and then I don't know what the other. Let's see here. Oh yeah, Legends of Tomorrow, Stargirl, and the Flash. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It says 5. What's the? Oh, and then there's the sixth issue is a crossover. Yeah, the final crossover in issue 6. So anyway, I've watched very, very little of these shows, so this does not interest me whatsoever, but maybe it does for you. And then moving on to Marvel, Spider-Man related news, because it is, they're starting to celebrate 60 years of the Amazing Spider-Man, and we get, besides getting a new Amazing Spider-Man #1, they will be publishing some facsimile editions of the first Amazing Spider-Man #1, as well as the Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1 and Spectacular Spider-Man #1. But of course, the big draw, the big news is that Amazing Spider-Man #1, drawn by John Romita Jr. So, as they say here, we brought John Romita Jr. back just for this, written by Zeb Wells. And so there you go. A new Spider-Man jumping on point, John Romita Jr. Coming back to that. Let's see here. I'm really curious because does it say? It does not say. Looking at the cover to Amazing Spider-Man #1, I'm curious who the inker is because the image looks a little different than the John Romita Jr. work that I saw JR doing on Action Comics with Brian Michael Bendis, because I did not like that at all. But this looks pretty good. And of course, you get a bajillion variant covers for this. So anyway. Okay, next up is Dark Horse. And oh my God, I got 4 things for Dark Horse. I actually had more than this, but I cut some for time. The first one is Cold Bodies. It's a trade paperback collecting. It doesn't say how many issues it was. Anyway, this is a story that I remember seeing in previews a while back. This is by Andre Moody and Magdalene Visaggio, and it's about as it says here, 1980s meta horror homage focusing on how trauma affects victims of slashers. And so this is one of those things that I've talked about before on various episodes, but I once had an idea similar to this many, many, many years ago to write a story about the victims of slashers and continuing the story from the 1980s slashers films that I had watched when I was younger. And so to see this now come out, I find this very fascinating. So I'm really curious about what this story actually is, and so I might have to get this. And then next up is The Girl in the Bay by Corin Howell and J.M. DeMatteis, which is a huge draw for me in terms of why I wanted to read this. But also, it seems like an interesting story. And what I find fascinating about this is that I don't think this is the trade here. This is collecting the 4-issue miniseries. I don't think there was a trade before now, but the first issue of this miniseries was published 3 years ago, and it's just now getting collected. So I remember when I saw this miniseries in previews, I was thinking, oh, I want to get the trade when it comes out. Well, here we are. So interesting that it took that long to get this out. Anyway, this is about a young woman in 1969 is attacked and her body's thrown into Brooklyn's Sheepshead Bay. She survives, comes back to the surface, and discovers that 50 years have passed. And as it says here, an eerie doppelganger has lived out her entire life in her place. And so she has to unravel who tried to murder her, what happened, why there's this doppelganger. I mean, it sounds very fascinating, I hope. And, the artwork looks pretty good on the cover that I'm seeing. So, yeah, I'm getting this one for sure. Next up I had this idea 2 years ago, sort of, is Mystery Girl by Alberto, Albuquerque, and Paul Tobin. It says here, Trina Hampstead knows everything. Ask her a question like, where are my keys? Or is he cheating on me? Or how are there perfectly preserved mammoths in recent ice? And she just knows. And then, things happen and there's a killer after her. Anyway, the whole idea is, where are my keys is the key here, because there was a character that I was considering writing a bunch of stories about. And he was similar in that I was going to write a scene where someone was looking for their keys and he's like, oh, they're over here. And he would just kind of know things like that and how that would creep out his college friends and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. It's fine. The parallel's fascinating. Next is Rewild. It's a trade paperback by Yana Adamovich or Adamovic. I don't know how that final C is pronounced. And writer Devin Grayson. So it says here, Fables meets the Fisher King. In this graphic novel, Poe is a mysterious young homeless woman and self-proclaimed fairy changeling. Desmond is an enterprising engineer with a troubled past. When Poe demands that a park be built to mollify a dangerous new mutation of mythical creatures ravaged by climate change and furious with the human race, Desmond must question not only his own sanity, but the rationality of our entire species as he struggles to save his city and maybe even the world. But are we past the point of no return? Magic realism packs an environmental punch. Just the idea of supernatural creatures being pissed at us for ruining the planet. That idea I find very fascinating. So, all right, I chose this next one. It's called Stretcher Bearers. It's a graphic novel by Reed Beeman and Ryan Beeman. Because I had just read recently the first volume of Aerosmith by Pacheco and Busick, and at the as of the time of this recording, I have just talked to Damien Sleepy Reader 666 about that series, and so by the time you hear this, he should have that posted on his YouTube channel. And the audio version will be in the Longbox review feed at some point after this. But anyway, just the idea of a story set in World War I, which this is, but this examines it from a completely different perspective. So it just caught my eye because of that connection to World War I and via Aerosmith. And so what Stretcher Bearers, which you probably can guess from the title, is about, is that this young American goes over to Europe and joins the 4th Infantry Ivy Division, and he is assigned to a unit of stretcher bearers, men who were tasked with running into harm's way to rescue their fallen brethren from the clutches of death. Says here, a dark and honest look at the bond of brotherhood during war. This book tells the unforgettable tale of a young soldier trying to save the lives of wounded soldiers and keep the men he'd formed a bond with alive. Wow, somebody needs to edit that copy because that can be probably written better. But anyway, it sounds like a very fascinating story. Oh, I'm sorry. Stretcher Bearers was from the publisher Dead Reckoning. From jumping from one World War to another, here is a book from Graphics. Comes Courage to Dream by Neil Schusterman. This explores the Holocaust, given the news that I started this episode out with, through surreal visions and a textured canvas of heroism and hope. This book plunges readers in the darkest time of human history, the Holocaust, and explores one of the greatest atrocities in modern memory, delving into the core of what it means to face the extinction of everything and everyone you hold dear. And there are 5 interlocking narratives exploring one common story. I think this could this be this generation's Mouse? I don't know, but I'm very interested in reading this. And then finally, in the preview spotlight from Scout Comics comes, I believe this is pronounced Triskel, or is it Triskelly? I don't know. But it is by artist Monoramas and writer Felipe Pan. The cover is what drew me to this. But then I read the description here, and I'm like, ooh, this sounds really good, because I'm very interested in Celtic lore. And so when the main character Alec Ellis is granted a magical gift on Samhain night, the scales of power on the island of Albion are inadvertently shifted. Now, together with his friends, he is about to embark on a dangerous journey that shall decide the fate of their entire kingdom. Set in a medieval world populated by characters and events from Celtic myths and legends, Triskel is a visually stunning journey into the world of once-forgotten oral traditions. So, yeah, it says here it's steeped in the magic of Welsh and Irish folklore. So, I mean, this is not a trade paperback, so I'll be waiting for that from Scout Comics. All right, and now for the main event, I guess. I'm going to talk about my top 5 favorite comics of 2021. So this is a little different for me because usually, and for the last several years, I have devoted an entire episode to talking about my favorite comic books of the previous year. And I started out doing that, taking my notes and compiling everything, did all my numbers like I usually do. And then I started listing out my favorite books, and I realized, oh, all of my favorite books I've already talked about in previous episodes. So I decided to do it this way instead. So we shall see how this goes. And, you know, for people who have listened to my previous standalone favorites episodes, let me know what you think of this different approach. I may not do this again, you know, next year for 2022, but, you know, we shall see. All of the items on here, my top 5, I have already talked about in previous episodes. I will include links to those in case you missed them. I'll mention which episodes they are too. But I also did, and this was the really fun part, before I reveal my top 5, I went on Twitter and asked people to send me their top 5 comics of 2021. And so I'm going to run down those first. And I'll start off with Dan. I'll also have links to all these fine folks on Twitter, so you can go follow them and interact with them and talk comics with them. But Dan was the first. He sent me his top 5. I don't know if this is, so he listed them, 1 through 5. I don't know if this is in order of importance or inverted order, but here we are. I'm just going to go down the list. Number 1 here, he has In, the graphic novel, something I'm not familiar with. Next is Run. Third is Monsters, which I believe is the Barry Windsor Smith book that came out, that massive monster of a book I have over on my bookshelf. I still need to read. And then The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which is a book that I am getting, and A Journal of My Father rounds off his top 5. So yes, I'm only familiar with Monsters and The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, so I need to look up these other ones. From Chaos and Comics, their top 5 starts off with The Many Lives of Layla Starr. So, I mean, there you go. You got 2 folks here talking about one particular book. So it's probably pretty good. You should check it out if you haven't already. Supergirl, I assume it is the Tom King, Bilquis Evely miniseries that's being published right now. Echolands, which is the J.H. Williams III book, I believe. Inferno, which I'm not familiar with, and Wonder Woman Historia, which I can't wait for that to be collected and published. I really wanted to get it because of the Phil Jimenez book that I think started it, or was that the second one? I think it's the first one. Anyway, I want to read them all. So there you go, top 5 from Chaos and Comics, and then from my pal from across the pond, James. He sent me this list, Green Arrow 80th anniversary. So I forgot to ask James. James, is this the 80th anniversary 100-page super spectacular, or is it didn't they publish an 80th anniversary omnibus for Green Arrow? Anyway, So there's that. Cuddles, a last chance crime story, which I have read, and because James pointed me to it, and it's a pretty good one shot. So I quite like that. The next one he has here is Jalila, which is a book from TKO Studios. I remember seeing that solicited, but I don't know much about it. I did look it up because I needed to find out how to say the title because it's spelled a different way than I would have thought it was pronounced. So next up is Batman the Imposter. I don't know that one. I mean I've heard of it, but I don't remember anything about it. Who does it? What's the story about? And then White Ash Season 2 Number 1. He says here, because I discovered season 1 in 2021, but this was released in 2020. You know what? That's fair, James. I've done that in my previous favorites episodes as well, where, like Giant Days. I chose Giant Days last year as one of my favorites because that's when I read it, even though it came out, several years before. So he also gave me a special mention here from Fantastic Four number 33 because of the one-page. And he sent me an image, and I had to look this up on Marvel Unlimited. So I scrolled through that issue, and I'll just say, Johnny Storm, dude, keep it in your pants. That was funny. Just seeing Namor on this page laugh hysterically when there's that reveal, and then Reed Richards stretches his hand across the way because he's sitting further away from Johnny and just slaps him upside the head. I just thought it was funny. Anyway. All right. Let's see here. From Sergeant America, he sent me a list. Scumbag, I'm not familiar with that. Stray Dogs, which I recently got the trade, so I'll be reading that. Two Moons. Two Moons. I don't know that one. Human Target, which I just purchased recently, the 4-issue singles. I talked about how I'm not getting singles. Well, I'll be getting Human Target, and I'm getting Nightwing from now on. Plus, I'll probably be getting Nightwing in hardcover as well. And then finally, Strange Academy, which I have heard other people talk about how good that is. And I've just been waiting to read that on Marvel Unlimited. So I need to get back to Marvel Unlimited and read some of these books. And then finally, I had Adam Walenta reply to me and James, and he threw in his favorite book, which is one of his, Punk Taco. And I include this because, I liked Adam's moxie there. So there you go. Go check out Punk Taco. Anyway, I just want to thank everybody for sending me their top 5 comics of 2021. It's really great when I can have people interact with me and, added benefit, tell me about some comics I hadn't even heard of, or I, saw in previews, but, maybe breezed past or whatever. And so it makes me want to go check out these books. So thanks again, folks. Okay. Now my top 5. So, like I said, I was looking through all of the books, the few hundred, I guess it was, that I read, over the course of 2021. And normally, I pared down my list by just thinking about the books that I had more of a reaction to in some way. Or, it could be also, how technically brilliant the work was, from a production standpoint. So anyway, that's kind of my general approach. And then, I'll further refine the list. This time, however, it was pretty easy as I was looking through the list of books that I had read. And like I said, once I started narrowing down that list, I realized, oh, I've talked about this one on the podcast. I've talked about that one on the podcast. So here we go. This is in ascending order. So the last one I'll talk about is my very favorite. It's the top of the top 5. So anyway, at the bottom of the list, and that is by no means any kind of judgment against it, is the Eden one shot that I talked about on episode 202. So part of the reason why I mentioned the construction of it, this was a lovely a lovingly, a beautifully illustrated book. How about that? Plus the story was interesting. But it's about a tattoo artist that has an encounter, a bit of magical realism, some tragedy involved, just the art on it. It was lovely. Go check out, my review of that in episode 202. And then, the earliest book on this list that I talked about from episode 190. This is the pull list. Oh, it was from about almost a little over a year ago. Yeah. The pull list, for January 2021 episode that I did. This is Moneyshot Volume 1. And, that is, that book is so much fun. Yes, it's about having, people going off into space and having sex with aliens, but it's so much more than that, like I talked about in that episode. So, it's about the relationships between them. It's about sexual hangups and maturity. And I love the concept of it. So I read Volume 2, wasn't as good to me as Volume 1, but it's extending the story a little more, so that's good. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to the next volume as well. And then third here is Commanders in Crisis, the first volume that I talked about on episode 203. So it's really funny. Most of these, yeah. So there's one in episode 202, 203, and 204. So right, boom, boom, boom. I'll get to those here in a second. And then one really early, and then one that I just talked about recently. So, apparently I read some really great books, like one right after the other. So, but anyway, Commanders in Crisis, like I said, I talked about that in episode 203. That has just a lot of really cool ideas, but, sometimes I've read Grant Morrison. So, he has a lot of these really cool ideas and ways of thinking about things, but sometimes the execution's not there. I think the execution is here in Commanders in Crisis. And so if you're interested in like high level ideas about life and relationships and superheroics and what that means to preserving life in a crisis level event situation. I mean, that sounds like a mess, right? But it works so well. I will admit there's probably, and I don't remember if I talked about this in that episode, but there's maybe a little bit of characterization that's a little flat because there's so many other things that are being examined in it, but it still works very well. So go check that out. There's only 2 volumes of this story. There's a beginning, middle, and end to it, and I quite enjoyed the entire ride. All right, next to last, the penultimate top 5 comic of 2021, something I read not too long ago in terms of when I recorded this, and that is Superman and the Authority Volume 1 that I talked about on episode 208. And I talked at length about how much I love, speaking of Grant Morrison, how much I love Grant Morrison's take on Superman and just the idea of Superman. So again, we're talking about ideas. So, Moneyshot, Commanders in Crisis, Superman, the Authority, all about these interesting ideas. So, lots of cool things going on there. But yeah, wonderfully drawn by Mikhail Hanin. For the most part, there are other artists involved in some of the other shorter pieces of the story. But yeah, I would love to have more of these characters and Superman together and just go off and have some wonderful adventures across the DC universe. So anyway, go check out my discussion in that episode on this book. And then finally, we have my favorite comic book. And yes, I'm going to cheat a little bit. You know what? I can do it. I did, however, read a few issues in 2021 of this book. And that book is, and I'm sure if you are a follower of me, of my show, and it's Nightwing. Nightwing Leaping into the Light by Bruno Redondo and Tom Taylor and Adriano Lucas on colors, Wes Abbott on letters, and there's some other folks involved as well, but that's the main team. I read issues 78 and 79 on the DCU app in 2021. And then when the book, the hardcover collection that I have here next to me came out, it actually came out in December. That's kind of why I'm also saying that this is valid. But I didn't get it until in January, because shipments were slow. I didn't read it until mid-January. In fact, it was January 18th that I read it. And once I got it, I read it immediately. And oh my God. I like I said, I talked about issue 78 on episode 204, but since then, obviously, I have read the rest of it. And so this volume collects issues 78 through 83, that first story arc. And I'll just say, I'll repeat probably some of the things that I said in that episode, but I fell in love with this new chapter of Nightwing from literally the opening scene. I knew that this was something special. It seemed very apparent that the creators got the character in the way that I see the character. I love the characterization of Dick Grayson and the supporting cast that's in here, especially Barbara. There are a few panels by Redondo and Lucas that are just freaking gorgeous. If I were to have a crush on a fictional character right now, it is Barbara Gordon. The way that she is depicted, and that's not just the way she's drawn, but the personality that Taylor is giving her, the words she's saying, her relationship to Dick Grayson, all of that, just all wrapped up into this beautiful red-haired person on the page. And my God, I am in love. I love how she is supporting Dick as his friend, his confidant, his partner, not just in the nightly tights situation, but just being there for Dick Grayson, and not just now, but like I said, that opening scene that starts the story when they were kids. It's just, I love that. I love the love story. It's wonderful. Speaking of the way that Redondo and Lucas illustrate Barbara, how Redondo especially plays on the page vertically and horizontally, showing the characters move through a setting on a large panel or across a 2-page spread. At first it reminded me of some stuff that I remember seeing Fraser Irving do in 2011's Zombie series. But then I came across a Twitter thread discussing the DeLuca effect, which is exactly that. It's showing characters move across a static background, and then just a few days ago too, I saw Ron Mars and some other comic creators talking about this, and they're asking what is this thing called, and so it's in the zeitgeist for some reason. I'm sure because of what Redondo is doing in Nightwing. I'm sure there are other examples that you probably know about that I don't, but it just seems, the convergence of all these things seems to come from that. But anyway, they were talking about a panoramic effect, or super panel, I think is another term that they used. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the correct terminology is, but I'm finding it very fascinating that comic creators themselves are discussing what this technique is and what is the importance of it and why it's cool and all that stuff. I love it. I love it. I love it. Again, speaking of the art, I love the covers. So, I didn't pick up Nightwing in singles. I thought about it, decided that no, I want to get away from singles. I'm trying to conserve space. I'm running out of space when it comes to my comics, so I'll wait. And then, the issue 78 came out, and it's like everybody went gaga over it. And as each succeeding issue has come out, the acclaim, the praise, it's like, oh, I'm missing out on one of my favorite characters in DC Comics. Well, in superhero comics anyway. And so, a few months passed, and I'm like, screw this. I saw some wonderful covers, and I'm like, I want these covers. I want these issues for these covers. I still wasn't trying to get all the singles. I just wanted to get a few of the covers I like. And so I went to a comic book shop in Spokane to see what they had, because most of the online shops that I buy from nowadays, you can't get some of those issues. I mean, I got a couple, I think. But, I first got the issue 79's variant cover with showing Dick Grayson climbing up a bat line through showing him through the years, starting as Robin, through the various Nightwing identities he's had over the years. And it's an homage to the 1966 Batman television show, because Alfred in just off panel is holding up Robin's cape. At the top of it, Batgirl is leaning out the window. It's just the playfulness, the fun that these artists are having with this title is just wonderful. The first issue, which, by the way, I could have bought recently for $95 from a particular comic shop. I'm not paying $95 for that first issue, but that first issue cover of Dick Grayson, showing him kind of smiling slightly as he looks down over Bloodhaven with the Nightwing logo. Oh, it's just beautiful, simple but effective. Issue 81's the second printing cover showing Dick and Tim Drake as Robin, chilling there. Tim's sitting on this bench and Nightwing's next to him. They're on their phones. They're just chilling with their logos as graffiti on the walls behind them. I just love that. And then issue 83's the costume change. This is again like showing Dick as he descends this staircase. It's that DeLuca effect or the super panel or whatever. So yeah, great stuff. Since then, I bought some other. I decided that I would pick up as many of the singles issues as I can, because I'm going to get this in month to month, at least until the creative team changes. So I'm still missing 78, and I need 87, I think. Did I get all the rest? Anyway, I don't think that's right. I'm missing 2. I'm just can't remember which one of those is the one that I don't have. Anyway, all right. As to the story itself in the book, I starting off, I love that letter in issue 1 that Alfred wrote Dick, how Alfred trusted Dick to do the right thing with his fortune, but more importantly, the love that Alfred felt as a father to Dick Grayson just touched my heart in a similar way to the way that the whole relationship between Babs and Dick did as well. It's just the feeling, the emotion, the love that these characters have. Just Taylor and company is just hitting it out of the park. I also like the new spin on the Zuko connection in this story. It wasn't, and so far, it isn't what I thought it was going to be when I first was reading it. Now, that could be changed as the story goes on. We shall see. But if you haven't read this is going to be a spoiler. The reveal of Melinda Zuko, who is the daughter of the Zuko that killed Dick Grayson's family all those decades ago in publishing history. But Melinda is Dick's sister. So, that was interesting. While, it's a soap opera-esque twist, I liked it. I'm glad she's not just like, her dad, she's a clone of her dad and is the bad guy that Dick Grayson has to deal with. To be honest, I could care less about the actual adversary in this story, which is the new character Heartless, or even Blockbuster. More important to me is how Dick consults with various people what to do with the money that Alfred left him. First, he talks to Barbara, a bit with Tim. He goes to Leslie Tompkins. He talks to the Titans and Lucius Fox. And then he has a conversation with Superman. And Clark reveals that he looked up to Alfred and then compares Dick Grayson to him. Yeah, so Superman in the issue says, I'm sorry about Alfred. I looked up to him greatly. Dick says, Superman looked up to Alfred Pennyworth? Superman, of course. The world would have been lost without the heroes he raised. Not Bruce, Alfred. That was me, my commentary. Back to Superman. Without his generosity, his love, his support, you're a lot like him, you know. So I love that. And then Superman asks Dick Grayson to give his son some guidance and friendship because, as Superman says, I couldn't think of a better role model. Later, after his press conference announcing his initiative, Bruce calls him and he says, "You honored him today. Thank you." So, you know, just this story to me is more about the relationships that Dick has with everybody else, and that the feelings that they have for each other. It really just touches me. This story, these characters as interpreted by this team just fills my heart so much. So I am in love with this book. So much so that as I was reading it, literally as I would read panels or I'd read the issues, I would stop and show my wife certain panels or pages and explain why I love that bit so much, which is not something I normally do. Comic books are something that my wife, she supports my hobby very much so, but she's just not interested in reading this stuff with me. So it is extremely rare. I can't remember the last time I did this. Even if I did, I'm sure I've talked to her about how much I like this or that, but I rarely have the book in my hand and then point to a panel or a page or a piece of dialogue and say, "Look at this! It's so cool." You know, so that's how much I love this story. I love this comic book. So, before I leave Nightwing, there's some other good bits in the story that I just wanted to make note of. Dick acquires Haley, aka Bitewing, a dog. I just love the fact that Dick Grayson's now a dog person. Just makes me love the guy even more because I love dogs. He refers to Tim as his brother. I know he's done this before and other things. Tim's his brother. I don't know. Does he refer to Jason as his brother? Damian, definitely. But, just the idea of, referring to, his family in that way, these adopted people who are his brothers. So, when he's fighting Heartless, Dick is talking to Babs about the villain as he's fighting him, to which the villain asks, quote, "Do you always narrate your fights?" And Dick replies, "Just the boring ones." Just the humor. I love it. Later in that same issue, Babs is talking to Dick, and she's wearing a t-shirt, with Batman slapping Robin, that meme that I'm sure we've all seen. And it's just so funny. It's just there. And it's partly covered up by the shirt that she's wearing over it, but it's clearly there. So it seems to me that the creative team are just having as much fun creating this book as I am reading their work. And then there's a scene in one of the issues where, and this goes back to the whole relationship thing and the family thing, and this scene choked me up. Dick Grayson breaks into Melinda Zuko's home and gets knocked out, and not Dick's finest moment, I would say, but he comes to, and he talks to Melinda for a second, but then he realizes, oh wait, and he contacts Barbara and says, "Call it off." And she's like, "Are you sure? Are you okay?" And he's like, "Call it off." And what it is that Barbara has called the Titans and Batman, and they're all racing to where Dick is in Zuko's apartment to help him. Yeah, I just love this book so much. So, and that is why it is my favorite book of 2021. So what do you think? What do you think of my choices? What books should I have given a nod to? What books are your favorites? If you want to continue the conversation, like my Twitter friends, let me know what your favorite books of 2021 were, or if you have any other items on previews that you felt like should have gotten the spotlight that didn't. Let me know. I would love to hear from you. You can email me at longboxreview@gmail.com. Leave comments at the website and talk to me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook at Longbox Review. And with that, we are done with the February 2022 Spotlight and my top 5 favorite comic books of 2021. I am out of here. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.